This will move us into chapter 13. The first thing we'll do is section 1, which involves what we call distributive property and common factors. So again, we've talked about the distributive property where you multiply through addition, but what we're going to be doing now is what's called factoring. So our first question says factor completely and check. So we have the expression 9a plus 9b. So to factor it basically means we want to break the problem back into a multiplication expression. The distributive property is used, but in a reverse direction. So some of the reasoning we're going to be using is going to actually involve more of a concept of division. So in our problem, to factor, notice how we have two terms. We have a 9a and a 9b. What we're looking for is, does the 9a and a 9b have a common factor? Well, notice how they both have a 9 in common. So the common factor, a lot of times we call the GCF. So the GCF stands for greatest common factor. We want to be using that concept. So notice how these two terms both have a 9 in common. So the GCF in this problem is a 9. So what we do is we write the 9 out. And so like I said, for breaking it back into multiplication, what we do is use parentheses for multiplication. So we put a parenthesis here. And then what we essentially are doing is factoring a 9 out, which means we're actually dividing the 9 out. So if I divide the 9 out, that's going to leave me an A. So if I remove the 9, then I'm dividing this by 9. So when I divide by 9, the 9 goes out. And notice how if I bring the 9 out here, that's going to leave me a B. So 9A plus B. So I'm actually dividing the 9 out, which means it's now out in front. Now, if you want, you can double check by multiplying by through. Does 9 times A get you back to 9A? And does 9 times B get you back to 9B? It does. So factoring means it's got to start to take on the look of multiplication. And to take on the look of multiplication, you're going to start to see these parentheses. So one of the first strategies in factoring is what's called the greatest common factor. So since these two terms both had a 9 in them, we can bring the 9 out. And then by doing so, we're dividing each term by 9. And what's left is going to be what I put inside the parentheses. So now notice how the 9 divides out, the 9 divides out. And that just leaves me this A plus B. And that's what remains inside the parentheses. So that's kind of what we're doing here in these problems is we're using concepts of division and factoring.